1/3 of all Native women will experience sexual assault at some time in their lifetimes, and on some Native homelands that number can be twice as high as that. Native women are 2.5 times more likely to experience sexual violence than non-Native women. 80% of all sexual assault cases are committed by non-Native men. 80% of all Native women will be violently assaulted in some way during their lifetime. Native communities are severely limited in their tribal jurisdictions to prosecute cases in which non-Native offenders are committing these types of crimes on Native homelands. In 1885, sovereignty was taken away. Native nations no longer had the ability to prosecute offenders who committed crimes on their homelands, and that the federal government would now be prosecuting those cases. In 80% of all sexual assault cases, the federal prosecutors decline to prosecute the case. There is a sense among Native people that this issue has become somewhat hopeless, and that's why we're here fighting for this today. There's a sense that if a Native woman experiences sexual assault, the chance of her attacker actually coming to justice and being sentenced to prison time for their crime is slim to none. Our families have said to their young women and daughters who've experienced this, you may not want to report this because nothing's going to happen anyways. What's going to happen is you're going to go through hours of examinations and interviews, you're going to talk to police, and then nothing's going to happen. Once they're victimized twice, that apathy then even gives perpetrators even more of a license to view Native homelands as hunting grounds. Like, this is a safe place to come to rape or assault people and get away with it.
My name is Olivia Walker. This is my father, Alex Walker Jr. And we're here today as a part of a national movement. Today is May 5th. It's the National Day to honor missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. And so we know that it's a national epidemic across, First Nations and into the United States. His niece, my cousin Rita Papaki, went missing in January of 2015. And so we're here to, bring awareness to her. She's missing, presumed murdered. We really want to raise awareness so that people know that this is an issue here in the state of Iowa.
Missing daughters, missing mothers, grandmothers, nieces.
Yeah, and you can see it along the West Coast as well. There's not a lot of great national data, but that's a part of the policy and advocacy that we want to do, is that we can actually track the number of women and other relatives who are missing, and so that we can actually do something about it. There's criminal jurisdiction issues, so whether someone goes missing on tribal land, if they go missing in a nearby town, if they're missing in the county and the state, and in urban communities, is kind of like this checkerboard issue with criminal jurisdiction. So it makes it hard to figure out who's in lead or who's in charge, and then in some areas there's just no interest at all.
One of the things I think is kind of like a big issue is also racism. And we have young women that's been missing for days, months, weeks, some years, and nobody cares. I think it's important for us to speak up, start speaking up, and being heard by the public.
This is a really important issue. It's a really important event, and so it's really amazing to see the sea of red out there. To be here to support our missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives. It's here from Meskwaki Nation. You out there? Thank you. As you know, this is Meskwaki Nation territory. This is all Indian land, and so I think a traditional land acknowledgement is important so that we center ourselves in this place that we're at. Indian land, this is a sacred place. So we're just really thankful, for everybody showing up today. We have issues with racism, oppression, white supremacy, cultural genocide, historical trauma, ongoing trauma in our communities, but we're also beautiful and resilient people, and that's why we're all here today. We're all here because we care. We're all here to take a stand. We're all here to make a difference in our communities because we don't want this to happen again to another relative. We have a lot of young children here. It's really important that we're here for them and that we continue to survive.
Tansi, with a sad honor to be standing here today, but I want to say thank you to Rise Iowa, the Meskwaki Nation and the Sac and Fox Nation of the Mississippi of Iowa, and to the 28 nations that still have ties to Iowa, like the Omaha, the Winnebago, the Santee, many Dakota, Lakota nations, and Anishinaabe nations. Have been doing this work for a while, research and writing about this issue, this very huge crisis that's been hitting our communities now for 500 years. The relentless colonization of our territories has a direct correlation to an increased rate of violence against Indigenous people, in particular women, children, and Two-Spirits. We have many names for this crisis, one of which is missing and murdered relatives, MMIR. Our focus here is to call attention to the fact that temporary workforce housing, also known as man camps, for large construction projects, fossil fuel extraction, or mineral mining, has on Indigenous communities situated nearby. As James Anaya, former UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous People, has stated, Indigenous women have reported that the influx of workers into Indigenous communities as a result of extractive projects has also led to increased incidents of sexual harassment and violence, and including rape and assault. There were many men that came into our communities and created havoc within these communities, and they still do. A study in Canada examining the potential impacts associated with the construction of the Mount Milligan mine in British Columbia. The report states that since the boom, Native American communities have reported increased rates of human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking, and missing and murdered Indigenous women in their communities. The UN recommend that the United States also increase stronger language in the Violence Against Women Act that gives tribal entities more jurisdictional grounds to prosecute perpetrators on their own territories. Right now, that's very much an issue that is going on all over, where a lot of non-tribal members are getting away with murder, with rape, with violence, with all sorts of assaults, and they're falling into this gray area where they're not being prosecuted. And even though VAWA increased language in 2013 to give more protections to Indigenous people and to immigrants and to LGBTQ people, it's still not enough. So we need to keep telling our legislators that we have the right to prosecute these people. We have the right to make sure that these people are put away and that justice is served. We just really hope that Indigenous people's rights to own, use, develop, and control the lands they possess will be recognized in both countries. It's one of the reasons why we are facing this crisis, because it's about borders, it's about territories, and it's about the jurisdictions that we fall between. And our territories are constantly being encroached upon, not just by, corporate conglomerates that are backed by the government, but by people, just individuals trying to take advantage of, our rural situations. But what I'm happy to see is all the people here wearing red today in solidarity to finally put a stop to it. And I just wanted to end by
It is important to talk about the interconnection of racism, white supremacy, cultural genocide, historical trauma, ongoing trauma within systems that are meant to support us but really have broken apart our families. And so I think the important thing to remember too is that we're still here, we're still strong, we have resiliency. We want to bring awareness to the issues that are happening in our communities so that it doesn't happen to another family.